3 cycles ago, I witnessed something that still makes my scales itch with disbelief. Even now, as I record this transmission for the Galactic Council archives, I find myself questioning whether the atmospheric toxins affected my neural processors that day. But the bioscanners confirm it all happened exactly as I remember. My name is Corvan Beta, senior xenobiologist stationed on research platform Epsilon 7, orbiting the third moon of Zerath Prime. For the past 2 solar rotations, I had been observing the human colony settlement below, with the kind of clinical detachment my species, the Velarathi, are renowned for throughout the known systems. Humans fascinated us precisely because they defied every logical behavioral pattern we had catalogued in our databases. That morning started like any other. I was calibrating atmospheric sensors when my colleague Thane 6 burst into the observation deck with his usually pristine blue hide now a sickly green shade of panic. "Corvan, you need to see this immediately," he said, his voice crackling through his translator unit. "The storm front approaching the human settlement. It is registering as Category 9 atmospheric disturbance." I abandoned my instruments and rushed to the primary viewing station. What I saw through the enhanced optical array made my twin hearts skip several beats. A massive crimson tempest was rolling across the moon's surface like some ancient god's fury unleashed. Lightning arched between towering clouds that stretched beyond our sensor range, and the electromagnetic readings were off every scale we possessed. "How long until it reaches the colony?" I asked, already knowing the answer would not be pleasant. 47 standard minutes, Thane replied, his claws nervously tapping against the console. "The humans have been broadcasting evacuation protocols for the past hour. Through the magnification array, I could see tiny figures scrambling around the settlement like insects before a boot. Their emergency vehicles moved in organized patterns, loading civilians and equipment into transport shuttles. For a primitive species barely 3 centuries into space travel, they demonstrated remarkable efficiency under pressure. But then something caught my attention that made my blood crystallize in my veins. "Thane, magnify Sector 7 Alpha," I commanded. The image zoomed in on the settlement's eastern perimeter, where the human education facility stood. The structure appeared abandoned, its windows dark, evacuation markers clearly visible on its outer walls. But just beyond it, near the edge of the settlement's defensive barrier, movement caught my sensors. "By the eternal void," I whispered. 3 small figures huddled against the barrier's base. Even at this distance, their thermal signatures clearly identified them as juvenile humans. Children. They appeared to be trapped outside the settlement's protection, with the storm bearing down like death incarnate. "This does not compute," Thane said, checking his readings. "All human juveniles were supposed to be evacuated first according to their protocols." I was about to respond when a new heat signature appeared on our screens. A larger figure emerged from the settlement, moving toward the trapped children with purposeful strides. The individual's gait and size clearly marked them as an adult human. "Fascinating," I murmured. "One of them is attempting a rescue operation." "Attempting?" Thane's voice pitched higher. "Corvan, that storm will tear apart our reinforced platform hulls. Those humans use primitive metal and polymer construction. That individual is committing suicide." I had to agree with his assessment. The approaching tempest carried wind speeds exceeding 400 kilometers per hour, temperatures that would flash freeze exposed tissue in seconds, and electromagnetic pulses strong enough to disable most technological equipment. No rational being would venture into such conditions. Which, of course, meant the human would probably do exactly that. "Get me a direct communication link to the human settlement," I ordered. "Corvan, our non-interference protocols clearly state that." "Override them." "Authorization Corvan Beta 779. The communication array hummed to life, and within moments a grainy hologram appeared on our deck. A human female materialized, her face streaked with some kind of dark liquid. I later learned was perspiration. Her expression conveyed what our behavioral analysts had classified as controlled panic. "This is Colony Administrator Lisa Park," the image said. "Who am I speaking with?" "Research Platform Epsilon 7, I replied through my translator. "We have observed juveniles stranded beyond your perimeter. Are you aware of this situation?" The human's face contorted into an expression I recognized as anguish. We know those are 3 of our children who got separated during the initial evacuation. Tommy, Sarah, and little Jake. They are trapped on the wrong side of our barrier, and the storm will reach them in 38 minutes. What rescue measures are you implementing? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. None, she said, her voice carrying what humans call defeat. We cannot get our vehicles through the barrier quickly enough, and the storm's electromagnetic field is already interfering with our remote systems. Anyone who goes out there on foot will not make it back. Then why is there a human approaching their location? Administrator Park's image flickered as her expression shifted to something between horror and recognition. Oh no! Marcus, you idiot. Marcus Reed, our head of colony security. He must have overridden the barrier locks. I watched through our sensors as the human male continued his approach toward the stranded juveniles. His movement patterns suggested determination rather than desperation, which somehow made the situation even more incomprehensible. Can you contact this Marcus individual? I asked. His communication unit went dark 2 minutes ago, Park replied. The storm's interference is getting stronger. I terminated the connection and focused all available sensors on the unfolding scene below. The human male had reached the children's position and was now gathering them together. Even at maximum magnification, I could see them responding to his presence with what appeared to be relief and trust. Corvat, Thane said, his voice tight with concern. The storm front will reach their position in 31 minutes. Even if this Marcus human could carry all 3 juveniles simultaneously, which his physical specifications make impossible, he could not traverse the distance back to safety in time. I know, I replied, unable to look away from the scene below. So why is he not returning immediately? That was the question that would haunt me for cycles to come. Any rational being would have made the obvious calculation. 3 juveniles plus 1 adult equaled 4 casualties instead of 3. Basic mathematics, basic survival instinct, basic common sense. Except humans, as I was learning, did not operate according to basic anything. Through our sensors, I watched Marcus Reed gather the 3 children closer together and then do something that defied every logical prediction model in my database. Instead of immediately beginning the return trip to safety, he started examining the terrain around their position. What is he doing? Thane asked. I have absolutely no idea, I admitted. The human appeared to be studying the landscape with the intensity of a tactical analyst. He moved from position to position, occasionally touching the ground or examining rock formations. His behavior suggested he was searching for something specific, though what that could be in a barren stretch of moon surface remained a mystery. 28 minutes until storm contact, Thane announced unnecessarily. The storm front now dominated the horizon, a wall of crimson chaos that made our advanced meteorological instruments weep with inadequate readings. Lightning struck the surface with increasing frequency, each impact registering on our seismic detectors. The very air seemed to writhe with electrical potential. And still the human continued his methodical examination of the terrain. This is madness, Thane muttered. Pure, undiluted madness. I was beginning to suspect that madness might be exactly what the situation required. Marcus Reed suddenly stopped his search and focused on a particular section of rocky outcropping about 50 meters from the children's position. He approached it with renewed urgency, dropping to his knees and beginning to clear away loose stones and debris with his bare hands. Is he digging? Thane asked, incredulous. It appears so, I confirmed, though the concept seemed as alien to me as it clearly did to my colleague. The human's excavation revealed the entrance to what appeared to be a natural cave formation. He spent several precious minutes examining the opening before returning to the children and guiding them toward his discovery. He found shelter, I said, pieces of a larger strategy beginning to form in my mind. He is not attempting to outrun the storm. He is planning to wait it out. Impossible, Thane objected. The storm duration is projected at 16 hours minimum. The atmospheric pressure changes alone will be lethal, and the temperature fluctuation will not matter if the cave provides adequate protection, I interrupted. Corvan, you are beginning to sound like them, Thane said with obvious concern. No rational being would gamble 4 lives on an uncharted cave formation's ability to withstand a Category 9 atmospheric event. No rational being would venture into the storm in the first place. I countered. Yet here we are, observing exactly that scenario unfold. Through our sensors, I watched Marcus Reed guide the 3 children into the cave opening. The last thermal signature disappeared from view just as the storm's leading edge reached their former position. Within seconds, the entire area vanished beneath a swirling maelstrom of wind, lightning, and atmospheric chaos. "Contact lost," Thane announced. "All readings from that sector are now impossible due to electromagnetic interference." I stared at the tempest raging across the moon's surface and found myself experiencing something I had never felt before while observing human behavior. Instead of the usual mixture of bewilderment and academic fascination, I felt something that could only be described as concern. 4 sentient beings had just vanished into a natural disaster that would challenge our most advanced survival technologies. One of them had chosen to be there, had walked deliberately into almost certain death, because 3 smaller members of his species needed help. The logical part of my mind insisted this was simply another example of human irrationality, their well-documented tendency towards self-destructive behavior when emotional responses overrode survival instincts. But another part of me, a part I was reluctant to acknowledge, suggested something far more unsettling. Maybe it was not irrationality at all. Maybe it was something else entirely, something that made perfect sense from a perspective my species had never developed. "How long until we can re-establish sensor contact?" I asked. "Storm duration is estimated at 16 hours and 43 minutes, Thane replied. "However, electromagnetic interference may persist for additional time after the weather event concludes." 16 hours. More than enough time for 4 human life forms to succumb to exposure, dehydration, oxygen depletion, or any number of environmental hazards their primitive physiology could not withstand. I settled in for what promised to be the longest observation period of my career, wondering whether I would be recording a rescue or documenting a tragedy. Outside, the storm raged with the fury of creation itself, and somewhere beneath its crimson chaos, a human named Marcus Reed was probably explaining to 3 frightened children why everything would be all right. The terrifying part was, I was starting to believe he might actually be right. As the hours crawled by, I found myself checking the chronometer with increasing frequency. Thane had retreated to his quarters after the 8th hour, claiming he needed rest. I suspected he simply could not bear to continue watching the readings that showed nothing but atmospheric violence where 4 life forms had last been detected. But I remained at my station, staring at the tempest and wondering what kind of species produces individuals willing to walk into certain death for the slim possibility of preventing others from facing the same fate. By the 10th hour, I had consumed enough stimulants to keep a velocity alert for 3 full cycles. By the 12th hour, I was questioning whether my interest in this situation had crossed from professional into something uncomfortably personal. By the 14th hour, I was forced to confront a possibility that challenged everything I thought I understood about survival, logic, and the fundamental nature of intelligent behavior. Maybe the humans were not the primitive, irrational species we had classified them as. Maybe they were operating according to a form of logic so advanced, so sophisticated, that our analytical frameworks could not adequately process it. Maybe walking into a death zone to save 3 children was not the height of foolishness. Maybe it was the height of wisdom. The storm began to weaken during the 15th hour, its electromagnetic interference gradually diminishing enough for our sensors to penetrate the chaos. I held my breath, which is an interesting expression I had learned from human linguistics databases, and waited for the readings to clarify. When they did, what I saw made me question whether I was suffering from stimulant-induced hallucinations. 4 thermal signatures. Still alive. Still together. Still hiding in their impossible shelter, while the last of the tempest raged overhead. Marcus Reed had somehow managed to keep himself and 3 children alive through a storm that should have killed them all within the first hour. The question now was whether they could survive long enough for rescue operations to reach them. Because while the storm was ending, their ordeal was far from over. And I was beginning to suspect that the most dangerous part of this entire situation was not the weather, the environment, or the technical challenges of mounting a rescue operation. The most dangerous part was my growing conviction that I was about to witness something that would fundamentally change how I understood what it means to be truly intelligent. The celebration in the human colony lasted exactly 47 seconds before everything went straight to the 7 hells of Gorvac Prime. I was monitoring the rescue preparations when Thane burst back onto the observation deck, his scales now displaying the violent orange pattern that indicated extreme alarm among my species. "Corvan, we have a massive problem," he announced, his claws clicking rapidly against his datapad. "Long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching this system. Configuration unknown, but their drive signatures are definitely not human." My twin hearts performed what humans might call a synchronized diving routine. "Show me." The tactical display materialized between us, revealing 3 vessel signatures moving at combat speed toward Zurath Prime's third moon. Their approach vector was aggressive, their energy signatures were unfamiliar, and their timing was impossibly suspicious. "Analysis," I demanded. "Best guess based on drive characteristics and hull configurations." "Skaarn raiders," Thane replied, his voice carrying the kind of dread usually reserved for discovering your food supplies have been contaminated with toxic spores. "Skaarn raiders, the galaxy's most enthusiastic practitioners of what they cheerfully called aggressive commerce and what everyone else called piracy, slavery, and casual genocide. They specialized in hitting isolated colonies during natural disasters, when defenses were compromised and rescue operations were impossible. Perfect timing, really. Almost like they had been monitoring communications and waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity." "How long until they reach the moon?" I asked, though I suspected the answer would ruin what little remained of my day. "At current velocity, 3 hours and 16 minutes. I stared at the tactical display and felt my analytical processes grinding against each other like damaged gears. The human colony was in complete disarray after the storm. Their defensive systems were offline for maintenance and repair. Half their population was scattered across emergency shelters. Their security forces were focused entirely on search and rescue operations. And somewhere beneath the moon's surface, 4 humans were trapped in a cave, completely unaware that their survival of an impossible storm had just become the least of their problems. "Contact Colony Administrator Park immediately," I ordered. The communication link crackled to life, revealing the same human female from our earlier conversation. She looked exhausted, her hair disheveled, her clothing stained with various substances I preferred not to identify. Behind her I could see other humans moving with the controlled urgency of a disaster response operation. "Platform Epsilon 7, she said, recognizing our signal. "Please tell me you have good news about Marcus and the children." "Your people are alive and stable," I confirmed. "However, we have detected a new threat approaching your system. 3 vessels of unknown configuration. Estimated arrival in 3 hours and 14 minutes. Administrator Park's face went through a series of expressions that our xenopsychology databases had catalogued as confusion, recognition, horror, and resignation. An impressive emotional progression accomplished in less than 4 seconds. "Scatter?" she asked. "Most likely," I confirmed. "Perfect," she said, and I detected what humans call sarcasm in her vocal patterns. "Just absolutely perfect. How long do we have?" "Insufficient time to complete evacuation protocols," I replied honestly. "Your colony transport capacity cannot accommodate full population relocation within the available time frame." "And Marcus and the kids?" I hesitated before responding. "Their location is beyond our current rescue capability given the approaching threat. Any rescue operation would need to be completed within the next 2 hours to allow sufficient time for defensive preparations." Administrator Park stared at me through the communication link with an expression that conveyed what I was beginning to recognize as the particular brand of human determination that preceded spectacularly irrational decisions. "How many people do you estimate the Skaarn will kill if they take the colony?" she asked. "Based on historical data, approximately 60% casualties during initial assault, followed by complete elimination of remaining population within 72 hours. And if we abandon Marcus and those children to mount our defenses immediately, survival probability for colony population increases to approximately 43%. She nodded slowly, as if my statistical analysis confirmed something she had already calculated. "Thank you for the information, Platform Epsilon 7. Park out." The communication link terminated, leaving me staring at dead air and wondering what decision the humans would make. Logically, the choice was obvious. 4 lives versus 400 lives. Basic mathematics dictated sacrificing the few to save the many. which meant, knowing humans, they would probably do the exact opposite. "Corvan," Thane said, studying his sensor readings. "The human rescue operation is launching. 2 vehicles, 12 personnel, full combat equipment." "Combat equipment?" I asked. "Weapons, armor, heavy cutting tools, medical supplies, and what appears to be enough explosive charges to level a small mountain." I accessed our database of human military terminology and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the environmental controls. They are not just mounting a rescue operation. They are preparing for a fighting withdrawal against Skaarn raiders. Thane's voice climbed into frequencies that made my hearing organs ache. "Corvan, 12 humans with portable weapons against trained Skaarn assault troops? That is not tactical planning, that is elaborate suicide." I was forced to agree with his assessment. Skaarn raiders were professional killers who had turned violence into an art form. They wore armor that could deflect most small arms fire, carried weapons that could punch through reinforced bulkheads, and possessed combat experience gained from raids across dozens of systems. 12 humans with portable equipment against a full Skaarn assault force was like watching insects declare war on a fusion reactor. "Get me detailed readings on the rescue operation," I commanded. The sensor array focused on the 2 human vehicles as they departed the colony's perimeter. Leading the convoy was what humans called an armored personnel carrier, its hull scarred from previous encounters with hostile environments. Following behind was a heavier vehicle that our database identified as an engineering unit, equipped with excavation tools and heavy lifting equipment. "Vehicle 1 contains 8 humans in combat configuration," Thane reported. "Vehicle 2 contains 4 humans plus excavation equipment. They are taking the most direct route to the cave location. Time to reach Marcus and the children? At current speed, 47 minutes. I performed rapid calculations. 47 minutes to reach the cave, unknown time to extract 4 people from underground shelter, 47 minutes return trip. Best case scenario, they would complete the rescue operation 23 minutes before the Skaarn arrived. Worst case scenario, they would all be dead within the hour. "The Skaarn vessels are altering course," Thane announced suddenly. "They are moving to intercept the rescue operation." I stared at the tactical display in horrified fascination. The Skaarn ships had detected the human vehicles and were adjusting their approach to catch the rescue team in the open, far from any defensive positions or backup support. It was perfect tactical planning. Eliminate the rescue operation first, then assault the weakened colony at leisure. The Skaarn would capture or kill the humans in the field, then use their success as psychological warfare against the remaining colonists. "Contact the rescue team," I ordered. "Communication protocols suggest override all protocols. Authorization, Corvan Beta 779. The communication array connected to the lead human vehicle and a voice crackled through our speakers. Male human with the kind of calm professionalism that suggested either exceptional training or complete psychological detachment from reality. "This is Captain Jake Wilson, Colony Security. Who am I speaking with?" "Research Platform Epsilon 7. Captain Wilson, you have 3 Skaarn vessels moving to intercept your position. Estimated contact in 2 hours and 9 minutes. A pause. "Then copy that, Platform Epsilon 7. Can you provide tactical data on the hostile vessels?" 3 ships, heavy assault configuration, estimated crew complement of 60 combat personnel per vessel, standard Skaarn raider armament, and defensive systems. Another pause, longer this time. In the background I could hear other human voices exchanging rapid information in the kind of professional shorthand that suggested they were updating combat plans in real time. "Platform Epsilon 7. What is your assessment of our tactical situation?" I hesitated before responding. Statistically unfavorable seemed inadequate. Completely hopeless was more accurate, but potentially unhelpful. "Your mission success probability is extremely low," I said finally. "Copy that. Wilson out." The communication link terminated, and I found myself staring at the tactical display with growing amazement. The humans had received confirmation that they were driving into a trap that would almost certainly kill them all, and their response was to continue driving toward it at maximum speed. "Corvan," Thane said slowly, I am beginning to suspect that our classification of human intelligence may require significant revision. Why do you say that? Because either they are too stupid to understand the tactical situation, or they are operating according to strategic principles that our analysis cannot comprehend. I watched the human vehicles continue their approach toward the cave location, while Skaarn ships moved to cut off their escape route. 12 humans against 180 Skaarn raiders. Portable weapons against ship-mounted artillery. No backup, no air support, no possibility of reinforcement. Maybe, I said quietly, the distinction between stupidity and incomprehensible strategic thinking is not as clear as our databases suggest. The rescue convoy reached the cave location 43 minutes after departure, 4 minutes ahead of their projected schedule. Through our sensors, I watched human figures deploy from their vehicles with the kind of efficient coordination that suggested extensive combat training. But instead of immediately beginning excavation procedures, they did something that made my scales itch with confusion. Half the team took defensive positions around the perimeter, while the other half began placing what appeared to be explosive charges at strategic points around the cave entrance. Are they planning to blast their way in? Thane asked. Negative, I replied, studying their deployment pattern. Those charges are positioned to collapse the access road. They are preparing to deny the area to pursuing forces. But that would trap them inside the cave with Marcus and the children. Correct. For how long? I consulted our geological surveys of the moon's surface. Permanent burial under approximately 40 tons of rock and debris. The Thane stared at me with the expression Velrothi display when confronting something that violates fundamental natural laws. They are planning to sacrifice themselves to prevent the Skaarn from capturing Marcus and the children. It appears so, but Marcus and the children will still die from environmental exposure. Eventually, yes. So they are choosing certain death for all 12 rescue personnel to slightly delay certain death for 4 trapped personnel. That seems to be their tactical assessment. Korvac, I need to ask you a direct question, and I want you to answer honestly. Proceed. Do you think humans might actually be insane? Not metaphorically insane, not tactically unconventional, but genuinely, clinically certifiably insane as a species. I watched human engineers begin cutting through the rockfall that blocked the cave entrance while their security personnel established firing positions that commanded excellent fields of fire against approaching enemies. Their movements were precise, professional, and completely focused on a mission that defied every rational calculation I could perform. I do not know, I admitted, but I am beginning to suspect that sanity might be a luxury that intelligent species cannot afford when survival is at stake. The excavation proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Human engineering equipment cut through stone and debris like our own molecular disruptors, clearing the cave entrance within 18 minutes. The first human figure emerged from the opening carrying what appeared to be a small child, followed by Marcus Reed supporting 2 more children. Through our sensors, I could see that all 4 cave survivors were alive, mobile and apparently uninjured despite spending 16 hours in an unheated shelter during an atmospheric catastrophe that should have killed them within the first hour. How is that possible? Thane demanded. I have no idea, I replied honestly. The rescue team loaded the survivors into their vehicles and began preparations for departure. But instead of immediately racing back toward the colony, they continued placing explosive charges and setting up what appeared to be delayed detonation devices. Estimated time until Skaarn contact? I asked. 17 minutes, Thane replied. Estimated time for human convoy to reach colony defenses? 43 minutes. So they will be caught in the open with a 26-minute gap between contact with hostiles and reaching friendly support. Correct. I was starting to understand that this was exactly what the humans had planned for. The convoy departed the cave location at maximum speed, but instead of taking the direct route back to the colony, they followed a winding path that led through a series of rocky canyons and narrow passages. Their route would take longer to traverse, but it would also force any pursuing forces to follow them through terrain that favored defensive operations. They are leading the Skaarn into an ambush. I realized. An ambush? Thane's voice pitched higher with disbelief. 12 humans against 180 Skaarn in an ambush? That is not an ambush, Korvan. That is target practice. Maybe, I said, studying the human convoy's route through the canyon system. Or maybe we are about to witness something that will fundamentally challenge our understanding of tactical theory. The first Skaarn dropships landed near the cave location 8 minutes after the human convoy departed. Through our sensors, I watched armored figures emerge from the assault craft and immediately begin pursuit of the rescue operation. What happened next would be recorded in Galactic Council archives as the most tactically impossible engagement in the history of interspecies conflict. And it was about to teach me that sometimes, the difference between genius and madness is simply a matter of perspective. What I witnessed in the next 47 minutes made me question everything I thought I understood about warfare, tactics, and the fundamental nature of intelligent combat. The first indication that this engagement would not proceed according to standard tactical models came when the Skaarn pursuit force entered the canyon system. Their advanced scouts, heavily armored warriors carrying weapons that could punch through starship hulls, moved with the confident swagger of predators who had never encountered effective resistance. They were about to learn that confidence could be a terminal condition. "Corvan," Thane said, his voice tight with anticipation. "The humans have stopped their vehicles at a narrow section of the canyon. They appear to be getting out." I focused our sensors on the human convoy and felt my analytical processes stutter. Instead of continuing their retreat, the 12-member rescue team had indeed stopped their vehicles and were deploying on foot, but their deployment pattern defied every tactical manual in our database. They were not taking defensive positions. They were not establishing a perimeter. They were not even facing the direction from which the Skaarn would approach. Instead, they were climbing the canyon walls. "Are they abandoning their vehicles?" Thane asked. "I do not believe so," I replied, studying their movement patterns. "Look at their equipment distribution. Each human carried a weapon, but they also carried what appeared to be climbing gear, explosive charges, and communication equipment. They moved up the canyon walls with the efficiency of trained mountaineers, reaching elevated positions that provided commanding views of the canyon floor below. They are establishing elevated firing positions," I realized. "But that makes no sense. 12 individuals with portable weapons cannot generate sufficient firepower to stop a Skaarn assault force, regardless of positional advantage. Unless," Thane said slowly, "firepower is not their primary tactical objective." The Skaarn advance force rounded the canyon bend and immediately spotted the abandoned human vehicles. Their formation shifted from pursuit to assault, with lead elements moving to investigate while support teams established overwatch positions. Standard procedure. Textbook tactical response. Exactly what any competent military force would do when encountering abandoned enemy equipment in a confined space, which was exactly what the humans had counted on. The first explosive charges detonated along the canyon walls directly above the Skaarn formation. Not the charges the humans had placed during their ascent, but the charges they had somehow positioned during their original survey of this route. "When did they mine the canyon?" Thane demanded. "They did not," I said, reviewing our sensor data. "Those explosives were placed by previous human patrols. This entire route was prepared as a defensive position. The detonations triggered massive rock slides that sealed both ends of the canyon section, trapping the Skaarn advance force in a natural kill zone. But instead of immediately opening fire, the humans did something that violated every tactical doctrine I had ever studied. They started talking. "Attention Skaarn forces," a voice broadcast on multiple frequencies. "This is Captain Jake Wilson, Zurath Colony Security. You are trapped in a prepared defensive position with no possibility of escape or reinforcement. I am authorized to offer you terms of surrender." The silence that followed lasted approximately 3 seconds before Skaarn laughter echoed through the canyon. Their leader, a massive warrior whose armor was decorated with the bones of previous victims, responded with typical Skaarn diplomatic eloquence. "Human fool. We are Skaarn. We do not surrender to prey animals. When we finish killing you, we will take your colony and feast on the flesh of your young." "Copy that," Captain Wilson replied, with the same professional calm he had maintained throughout the entire operation. "Thank you for clarifying your intentions. All units, weapons free, execute tactical plan Omega-7. What happened next redefined my understanding of the phrase tactical plan. The humans did not simply open fire. They did not launch a coordinated assault. They did not attempt to overwhelm their enemies with superior firepower or tactical positioning. Instead, they began systematically dismantling the Skaarn force with the methodical precision of engineers solving a complex problem. The first phase targeted Skaarn communication equipment. Precision shots from elevated positions disabled antenna arrays and communication devices, isolating individual warriors from their command structure. The Skaarn found themselves unable to coordinate responses or call for support from their ships. The second phase targeted mobility systems. More precision shots disabled Skaarn jump packs and mobility enhancement equipment, forcing the warriors to operate on foot in terrain specifically chosen to limit their movement options. The third phase was where things became truly interesting. Instead of engaging the Skaarn in direct combat, the humans began using psychological warfare techniques that our databases had classified as theoretically effective but practically impossible to implement. Attention, Skaarn warrior designation Alpha 7. Captain Wilson's voice echoed through the canyon. You are standing directly beneath explosive charge number 4. Would you like to move to a different position before detonation? The targeted Skaarn warrior looked up at the canyon wall above him, spotted the explosive device and scrambled toward what appeared to be safer ground. Thank you, Wilson continued. You are now standing beneath explosive charge number 9. I recommend moving again. This continued for several minutes, with individual Skaarn warriors being directed away from immediate threats while the humans maintained perfect fire discipline. Not a single shot was fired during this phase, yet the Skaarn formation gradually dissolved into confused chaos as warriors abandoned their tactical positions to avoid targeted explosives. Corvantain whispered, "They are hurting them." He was correct. The humans were using the threat of precisely placed explosives to guide Skaarn movement, forcing the warriors into increasingly vulnerable positions without actually detonating any devices. But why? I asked. They could eliminate the entire force simply by triggering all explosives simultaneously. Maybe elimination is not their primary objective. The answer came during the fourth phase of the tactical plan. Attention all Skaarn personnel, Captain Wilson announced. You have now been maneuvered into positions where 12 separate explosive devices can eliminate your entire force simultaneously. However, I am prepared to offer alternative terms. We do not negotiate with prey, the Skaarn leader roared. I understand, Wilson replied. But I think you should hear the terms before making your final decision. First term, immediate departure from this system with no hostile action against colony personnel or installations. Ridiculous. Second term, you will broadcast a message to all Skaarn raider groups identifying this system as defended by forces capable of tactical achievements that you personally witnessed and could not counter. Impossible. Third term, you will provide coordinates for your base of operations and complete intelligence regarding planned raids against other human colonies. The silence that followed lasted considerably longer than 3 seconds. And if we refuse, the Skaarn leader finally asked. Then we detonate all charges simultaneously and return to our colony for lunch, Wilson replied with the casual tone of someone discussing weather patterns. However, I should mention that our tactical analysis indicates 12 additional Skaarn vessels are approaching this system, probably responding to your distress signals. You are lying. Negative. Our orbital monitoring platform can provide confirmation. Platform Epsilon 7, please verify approaching vessels. I found myself being drawn directly into the tactical situation, which violated approximately 47 different protocols regarding observer neutrality. But the human request was reasonable, and the tactical situation was unlike anything in our databases. Confirmed. I transmitted on the frequency Wilson had specified. 12 additional vessels. Skaarn configuration. Estimated arrival in 4 hours and 37 minutes. Thank you, Platform Epsilon 7. Wilson replied. So, Skaarn leader, you now face an interesting tactical problem. You can accept our terms and depart with your current forces intact, or you can refuse our terms and explain to 12 additional Skaarn commanders why their arriving forces will find nothing but radioactive debris and dead bodies. I was beginning to understand that the humans had not been planning a single engagement. They had been planning an entire strategic campaign. How did they know additional Skaarn forces would respond? Dan asked. They did not know, I replied. reviewing communication intercepts from the Skaarn vessels. They triggered the response deliberately. The original distress signal from the first Skaarn force was amplified and rebroadcast by human communication equipment to ensure maximum distribution. So they deliberately invited more enemies to attack them. It appears so. But why would they want to face even larger hostile forces? The answer came when I analyzed the strategic implications of the current tactical situation. 12 Skaarn vessels responding to a distress call would find a system where a 3-ship raider force had been completely neutralized by 12 humans using portable equipment and creative thinking. The psychological impact on Skaarn raider operations would be devastating. Word would spread throughout their networks that human colonies were no longer soft targets. Raider forces would begin avoiding human settlements, seeking easier prey elsewhere. 12 humans with a few explosive charges and a willingness to think tactically instead of conventionally had just created a strategic deterrent that would protect dozens of human colonies across multiple systems. The Skaarn leader is responding, Thane announced. Through our sensors, I watched the massive warrior remove his ceremonial helmet, revealing scarred features that spoke of countless battles across the galaxy. His voice, when it came, carried tones I had never heard from a Skaarn before. Uncertainty, respect, and something that might have been fear. "Human Wilson," he said, "your tactical demonstration has been educational. We accept your terms with one modification. Proceed. We request permission to examine your defensive preparations before departure. Our tactical analysts require documentation of methodologies that could neutralize Skaarn assault forces." Captain Wilson actually laughed, a sound that echoed strangely through the canyon. "Permission granted, but the inspection will be conducted under escort, and you will be provided with complete technical specifications for all systems employed. You would share military secrets with enemies? You are no longer enemies," Wilson replied. "You are potential allies who have learned that human colonies are defended by forces capable of tactical innovations that traditional military thinking cannot counter. The next raider group that considers attacking a human settlement will need to account for the possibility that their targets might fight back in ways that make conventional assault impossible." The standoff concluded with an outcome that violated every military precedent in galactic history. The Skaarn raiders not only withdrew without attacking the colony, but actually provided intelligence regarding other planned raids and requested permission to establish trade agreements with human settlements. 12 humans with portable weapons had transformed a raider fleet into a diplomatic mission through the simple expedient of demonstrating that attacking human colonies might involve risks that no rational pirate would accept. "Corvan," Thane said as we watched the Skaarn vessels depart the system, "I need to revise our species classification for humans. What revision do you recommend? I am not certain our current categorical framework is adequate. They appear to operate according to strategic principles that incorporate variables our analysis cannot even identify." I watched the human rescue convoy return to their colony, carrying 4 survivors who had been saved from an impossible storm by a man who walked into certain death because 3 children needed help. The same colony that had just neutralized a major military threat using tactics that transformed enemies into allies. "Maybe," I said, "the problem is not with our analytical framework. Maybe the problem is with our assumption that intelligent behavior must be predictable." "What do you mean?" "Every calculation we performed regarding human behavior was based on the assumption that they would act rationally according to logical parameters. But what if their intelligence operates according to logic that incorporates factors we do not recognize as logical, such as the possibility that saving 3 children might be worth risking 400 lives? The possibility that tactical defeat might be preferable to strategic compromise. The possibility that making enemies into allies might be more valuable than simply eliminating enemies." Thane stared at me with the expression Velrathi display when confronting concepts that exceed their cognitive processing capacity. "Are you suggesting that humans might be more intelligent than our assessment indicates?" "I am suggesting that intelligence might be more complex than our assessment methodology can measure." The human colony was celebrating. Through our sensors, I could see Marcus Reed surrounded by colonists who wanted to hear about his survival in the cave. The 3 children he had saved were telling their story to anyone who would listen. Captain Wilson and his rescue team were being hailed as heroes who had accomplished the impossible. And somewhere in the colony's command center, Administrator Lisa Park was probably updating security protocols based on tactical innovations that had just transformed their isolated settlement into a strategic deterrent that would protect human colonies across multiple systems. Corvan Thane said quietly, "I think we need to recommend that the Galactic Council completely revise their threat assessment protocols for human space." Why? Because if 12 humans with portable equipment can neutralize a Skaarn raider force and convert them into allies, what could 12,000 humans accomplish? What could 12 million humans accomplish? I considered the question while reviewing the tactical data from the engagement. Humans had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded our most optimistic projections by orders of magnitude. They had solved problems we classified as unsolvable, survived conditions we classified as lethal, and achieved tactical victories we classified as impossible. "I think," I said finally, "that the answer to your question might depend on whether those 12 million humans have something worth protecting." "What do you mean?" Marcus Reed walked into a death zone to save 3 children. Captain Wilson risked 12 lives to save 4 lives and ended up protecting dozens of colonies. Every tactical decision they made was based on the assumption that preserving life was more important than preserving themselves. So maybe the real question is not what humans could accomplish with superior numbers or advanced technology. Maybe the real question is what they could accomplish if someone threatened the things they care about. Through our sensors, I watched the human colony return to normal operations. Families reunited, infrastructure repaired, defensive systems upgraded based on lessons learned from their encounter with forces that should have overwhelmed them completely. But I noticed something else. The colony's communication array was broadcasting updated security protocols to other human settlements throughout the sector. Technical specifications for defensive systems, tactical innovations, strategic methodologies. They were sharing everything they had learned with every human colony that could receive their transmissions. "Thane," I said, "I think we may have witnessed something more significant than a successful rescue operation." "What do you mean?" "I think we may have witnessed the moment when humanity stopped being a collection of isolated settlements and started becoming something else entirely." "Such as?" I watched the data streams flowing between human colonies, carrying information that would transform defensive capabilities across dozens of systems. Technical knowledge, tactical innovations, strategic insights, all freely shared because one small colony had learned something that might help others survive. "I think," I said, "we may have witnessed the birth of the first truly cooperative military alliance in galactic history. Not an alliance based on mutual defense treaties or shared political interests, but an alliance based on the simple recognition that survival depends on ensuring that everyone survives." The implications were staggering. Human colonies sharing tactical innovations would become exponentially more difficult to attack. Raider forces would find themselves facing defensive systems that incorporated lessons learned from engagements across multiple systems. Each successful defense would generate new tactical knowledge that would be immediately transmitted to every other human settlement. Corvan Thane said, his voice carrying frequencies that indicated profound concern. "I think the Galactic Council needs to know about this immediately." "Why?" "Because if humans continue developing defensive capabilities at this rate, and continue sharing those capabilities freely among their settlements, they will become the most militarily sophisticated species in known space within a matter of years." I was forced to agree with his assessment. The tactical innovations I had witnessed suggested that human military thinking operated according to principles that traditional strategic analysis could not predict or counter. "Send the report," I said, "but include a recommendation that any diplomatic contact with human space should be conducted under the assumption that they are already more dangerous than our current threat assessments indicate." "How much more dangerous?" I watched the final data transmissions from the human colony, carrying tactical innovations that would soon be implemented by settlements across dozens of systems. Each colony would add their own improvements, their own innovations, their own solutions to problems that traditional military thinking classified as unsolvable. "I have no idea," I admitted. "But I suspect we are about to find out." The storm had ended. The children were safe. The colony was secure. And somewhere in the vast network of human settlements spreading across the galaxy, tactical knowledge was being shared that would ensure that no human child would ever again face a situation where survival depended on a single person walking alone into certain death. Because the next time humanity faced an impossible situation, they would not be sending one person to face it alone. They would be sending everyone. And that, I realized, was probably the most terrifying tactical innovation of all.